I still think about this one night from when I was a kid, and no matter how old I get, it never stops bothering me. It happened in 2006, a few days before Christmas, back when I was 8 years old and thought my house was the safest place in the world. At the time, I lived with my Aunt Lisa. She had been taking care of me for a few years, and she worked long hours, especially around the holidays. That night, she needed to run into town to pick up groceries for Christmas dinner. She didn't want to leave me alone for long, but it was supposed to be a quick trip. The store was only 10 minutes away, and I'd stayed home by myself before. She reminded me, like she always did, to lock the doors and not answer them for anyone. Then she grabbed her keys, told me she loved me, and headed out. I remember feeling kind of proud, like I was grown up enough to handle it. I was curled up on the couch in the living room, watching some old Christmas movie on TV, the kind with bad acting and cheesy music. The Christmas tree was glowing in the corner, covered in uneven lights and handmade ornaments. Outside, the sky was already dark, even though it wasn't very late. Our street in Pine Hollow was quiet, just a row of small houses with blinking lights and inflatable decorations that slowly swayed in the cold air. Everything felt calm, too calm. Then the doorbell rang. It wasn't loud, but it was sudden, and it made my stomach drop. Nobody ever came by that late, especially on a weekday. Aunt Lisa never used the doorbell. She had keys, just like everyone else who knew us. I sat there for a few seconds, listening. The TV kept playing, but it felt like the room had gone quiet anyway. I remembered her rules. Don't open the door. Don't talk to strangers. Still, curiosity pulled me off the couch. I walked slowly to the front door and stood on my tiptoes to look through the peephole. My heart was already beating fast, and I hadn't even seen anything yet. There was a man standing on the porch. He was dressed like Santa Claus. Not a cheap costume either. The red coat looked thick and heavy. The white beard was full and tangled, not neat like the mall Santas. The hat sat low on his head, casting a shadow over his face. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't holding presents. Just a clipboard tucked under one arm. What really scared me was how close he was standing to the door. Not politely back by the steps, but right up against it, like he expected it to open any second. I didn't open the door, but I stupidly whispered, "Who is it?" The man leaned forward. I swear he leaned toward the peephole, like he could somehow see me through it. His voice came through the door, deep and scratchy, like he hadn't spoken in a while. "It's Santa," he said. "I've got something special for you." I felt cold all over. I didn't believe in Santa anymore, and even if I had, this didn't feel right. My hands were shaking as I told him to go away. I said I didn't want anything. I tried to sound tough, but my voice cracked halfway through the sentence. There was a pause, a long one. Then he asked, very calmly, "Are you home all by yourself?" That's when panic hit me full force. I didn't answer. I stepped back from the door, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. I rushed back to the living room and sat on the floor behind the couch, pulling my knees to my chest. I turned the TV down low and hugged a pillow like it could protect me. A few seconds later, I heard the doorknob move. Not a hard twist, just a slow, careful turn, like he was testing it. I bit my hand to keep from screaming. Then I heard footsteps on the porch, fast ones, moving away from the front door. Before I could feel any relief, I heard something else. The back door. It rattled loudly, the old wood shaking in its frame. That door barely ever got used, and everyone knew it didn't lock well. I could hear him out there, breathing, shuffling, trying the handle again. My house only had 2 doors, and he was trying both. I crawled into the kitchen and grabbed the phone, my hand slipping as I dialed Aunt Lisa's number. When she answered, I couldn't stop the words from spilling out. I told her someone was outside. I told her he was dressed like Santa. I told her he was trying to get in. Her voice changed instantly. She told me to hide and not make a sound. She said she was on her way home and told me not to open the door no matter what, even if someone said it was the police. I hid behind the couch again, barely breathing. For what felt like forever, I heard little noises. Soft taps on the windows, footsteps crunching in the frost, a faint scrape against the side of the house. Every sound made my chest tighten. I was sure he could hear my heart pounding. Then everything went quiet. A few minutes later, headlights swept across the living room wall. I heard a car pull into the driveway. I didn't move until I heard the front door unlock and Aunt Lisa shout my name. She rushed inside, locked the door, and wrapped me in her arms. She told me she'd seen a man in a Santa suit walking down the street as she drove in. She yelled at him, asking what he was doing. He claimed he was collecting donations, but she said he looked scared and walked away fast. The police came later, but they never found him. Every Christmas since then, when I see someone dressed as Santa, I feel that same cold fear crawl up my spine. I don't see joy or gifts. I see a man standing too close to a door, waiting for it to open. And I can't stop thinking about how different things could have been if that door hadn't been locked. My name's Evan, and this happened back in 2019, right before Christmas. I was living in a small rental house outside a coastal town in southern Oregon. Lots of trees, lots of fog, and not many neighbors close by. It's one of those places where the road goes quiet after dark, and you can hear the wind move through the woods like something breathing. At the time, I lived with my roommate Jake. We weren't best friends or anything, just two guys splitting rent. That winter, Jake went back to Arizona to spend the holidays with his family. I couldn't afford the trip, and honestly, I didn't mind staying behind. I figured I'd enjoy the quiet, catch up on shows, and just coast through the week. That was the plan. The first night alone was fine. A little weird, sure, but quiet in a good way. The second night was when things started to feel off. It was early evening, maybe around 6:30, and it was already pitch black outside. It had been snowing on and off all day, the kind of wet, heavy snow that sticks to everything. The yard, the porch, the long gravel driveway, all of it was covered. The house felt extra empty without Jake around, so I had the TV on just for noise while I made dinner. Nothing fancy. Frozen pasta, burnt garlic bread, the usual single-guy meal. I was halfway through eating when I heard something strange. At first, I thought it was coming from the TV. I paused it and listened. The sound didn't stop. It was singing. Not loud, not clear, just enough to notice. Like someone humming, but with actual words. I leaned back in my chair and tried to place it. It was coming from outside. I stood up, my fork still in my hand, and listened harder. The sound drifted through the walls, thin and warped by the cold air. Then it clicked. Whoever it was, they were singing a Christmas song. Jingle bells, slow, off-key, dragged out, like they didn't really know how the song was supposed to go, just the general idea of it. My first thought was kids. Maybe someone walking home, messing around. But the voice was wrong. Too deep, too flat. It sounded like a grown man who didn't care if he was being heard. I walked toward the front door. With every step, the singing got louder. By the time I reached the door, it sounded like the guy was standing right outside. That's when I got that cold, tight feeling in my stomach. The kind that doesn't come from logic, just instinct. Still, I tried to be normal about it. I cracked the door open. Standing on my porch was a man I'd never seen before. Mid-30s, maybe older. No hat, no gloves. His jacket was thin and open, like he'd grabbed the wrong one on his way out. Snow had settled on his shoulders and hair, but he didn't seem to notice. He was staring straight down at my welcome mat, singing Jingle Bells, like it was the only thing he knew how to do. He didn't look at me, didn't react at all to the door opening. I stood there, frozen, waiting for him to acknowledge me. Nothing. I forced a smile. I don't know why. It just felt safer than doing nothing. When he finished the song, I expected him to stop, maybe laugh, maybe say something awkward. Instead, he took a breath and started the song again from the beginning. Same pace, same wrong notes. This time, though, his eyes lifted. He looked straight at me. There was nothing friendly in his face. No smile. No anger either. Just a blank, focused stare, like I was part of the song now. I let him sing again. I don't know how long. Long enough that my face started to hurt from holding that fake smile. Long enough for the air between us to feel thick and wrong. Finally, I thanked him and closed the door. The singing didn't stop. It continued, steady and patient, right through the door, like it wasn't even there. I went back to the table, but my food tasted like nothing. Every bite felt forced. The song looped again and again. After about 10 minutes, it stopped. The silence was worse. I peeked out the window. He hadn't left. He was standing at the end of my driveway now, perfectly still, facing the house, not singing, just watching. That's when fear really set in. I cracked the door and told him he had to leave, that he was on private property. I even said I'd call the police. My voice shook, even though I tried to sound firm. He didn't move. I locked the door, turned off the lights downstairs, and went up to my room. From the window, I saw he was gone. I convinced myself it was over. I was wrong. About 20 minutes later, the singing started again. This time, it was behind the house. I rushed to the back window and looked down. He was standing in my backyard, right below my window, looking up at me, singing. I yelled that I was calling the cops. He stopped mid-note, and he ran. I heard his footsteps slam against the snow, and the screaming started. Not singing anymore. Screaming, wild, animal. The kind of sound that makes your heart forget how to beat. The back door shook as he hit it over and over. I could feel it through the floor. I grabbed my phone, called 911, and hid in my closet with a baseball bat I barely knew how to hold. Then it stopped. The police found footprints leading into the woods. They never found him. I didn't stay in that house much longer after that. And every Christmas since, when I hear someone singing outside, even just kids walking by, my chest tightens. Because sometimes, I swear, I still hear that slow, broken version of Jingle Bells drifting through the dark. This happened when I was little. Way little. I think I was 7, maybe just barely. It was winter of 2013, and we lived in a quiet town called Pine Ridge, just outside a bigger city. Snow didn't fall often there, but that year the air always felt cold and heavy, like it was holding its breath. I lived with my mom, my stepdad, and my older cousin Evan, who stayed with us a lot back then. Evan was supposed to keep an eye on me when we went out, but he was still a kid himself, so he didn't always pay attention. A few weeks before Christmas, I had my birthday. It wasn't anything huge, just cake, balloons, and family talking too loud in the living room. What I remember most is how everyone kept talking about some crazy sports moment that had happened on TV that same day. I didn't really get it. I just liked that people were happy, and then I got presents. That year, Christmas felt extra exciting. I was starting to get into sports, jerseys, loud crowds, all of it. One of my big gifts was tickets to a Harbor City Hawks basketball game. It was my first pro game ever. I remember holding the ticket like it was made of gold. A few days after Christmas, we went to another game at North Star Arena. I was bouncing the whole drive there. The building looked massive to me, like a concrete castle glowing in the dark. Inside, everything echoed. Shoes squeaked, people yelled. Music blasted from speakers way too loud. It felt like a place where you could disappear if you weren't careful. At halftime, I got bored sitting still. I wanted snacks. I wanted to walk around. My mom took me and Evan to the food area, which was packed and noisy and smelled like grease and sugar. People were everywhere, bumping into each other, shouting orders over the noise. Evan stayed in line to pay while my mom stepped a few feet away. I had some candy in my pocket and walked over to toss the wrappers in the trash. The can was only a short distance away, but the crowd thinned out fast once I stepped away from the line. That's when a man spoke to me. "Hey, buddy," he said softly. I looked up. He was tall, wearing a light-colored jacket and a baseball cap pulled low. I remember his smile didn't reach his eyes. His eyes kept moving, like he was checking corners. "Are you lost?" he asked. I shook my head, but I didn't speak. My throat felt tight. "I don't see your parents," he said, looking around even though I knew they were close. "Come on, let's find them." Before I could think, he took my hand. His grip was firm, cold. We walked away from the noise, away from the food stands, toward a quieter hallway. The lights buzzed overhead. The cheers from the game faded until it felt like we were underground. He told me we were going to an announcement desk, said they'd call my name and my family would come running. It sounded logical. That's the scary part. Bad things don't always sound scary at first. We reached the upper level, where the air felt still and empty. No crowds, no workers. Just rows of seats and shadows. We stood there for what felt like forever. My stomach started to hurt. Then he tugged me toward a dark stairwell. No signs. No cameras that I could see. That's when something clicked in my head. A warning. A memory of adults saying never go anywhere alone with someone you don't know. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. The man looked down at his phone for just a second. I yanked my hand free and ran. I don't remember where I ran. I just ran toward noise, lights, people. I remember glancing back and seeing him standing there, watching me. He wasn't chasing me. He was smiling. Like he knew something I didn't. I found Evan near our seats. He looked scared and relieved at the same time. He hadn't told my mom I was gone. He didn't want to get yelled at. I didn't tell him what happened. I didn't know how. The game ended. People cheered. I felt numb. On the drive home, I stayed quiet. My mom kept asking if I felt sick. I said I was tired. Then a truck honked behind us, loud, angry. I turned around. It was him. Same jacket, same face, same smile. There were other people in the truck too. I couldn't see them clearly, just dark shapes. The truck followed us for several blocks. My stepdad yelled out the window. The truck finally turned away. I didn't breathe until we pulled into our driveway. That night, I woke up freezing. I felt watched. A light flickered against my bedroom wall. When I looked out the window, my heart dropped. He was there, standing in the yard, shining a flashlight slowly across my window. I screamed. My family ran outside, searched everywhere, but found nothing. They said it was probably a passing car or my imagination. But I know what I saw. On New Year's Eve, someone rang the doorbell minutes before midnight. I heard his voice through the door, calm, friendly, familiar. My parents said he was handing out flyers for a missing pet. I told them everything. They didn't believe me. A year later, I woke up to a tapping sound. There was a note taped to my window. This year isn't over yet. That's when my parents finally called the police. Nothing ever came of it. I'm older now. Different house. Different town. But every New Year's Eve, I close my curtains, lock my windows, and listen, just in case. I still think about that night way more than I want to. It happened back in 2012, but it feels closer than that. Like it's always sitting right behind my thoughts, waiting for me to slip up and remember too much. It was the first week of December, and my sister, Claire, talked me into driving out to the hills with her and her daughter, Lily. Lily was 8 at the time, full of energy, always asking questions, always bouncing around. Claire had recently gone through a rough breakup, and she wanted to do something wholesome, something that felt normal and warm. Her idea was to cut down our own Christmas tree instead of buying one off a lot. She found this place online, somewhere outside a small town called Pine Hollow. It was supposed to be quiet, scenic, and empty this time of year. That last part should have been a warning. The drive took about 2 hours. The road twisted more the farther we went, climbing into thick woods that blocked out most of the sky. Snow lined the shoulders of the road, piled up in dirty gray mounds. The clouds hung low and heavy, like they were pressing down on everything. Lily kept pointing out shapes in the trees, asking if they were animals or monsters. Claire laughed it off, but I could tell she was tense too. By the time we pulled into the parking area, it was already getting dark. Not full night yet, but close. The lot was small and empty, surrounded by trees that stood tall and tight together. A few old light poles flickered weakly, buzzing softly, barely doing their job. Still, it felt better than total darkness. We parked near a narrow trail that disappeared straight into the woods. There was snow everywhere. It covered the ground in uneven layers, crunching loudly when we stepped out. Lily immediately started kicking it around, laughing and throwing handfuls at us. I joined in for a moment, trying to keep things light. I didn't want to be the grumpy uncle who ruined the mood. We brought flashlights, a small handsaw, and some rope. The trail was barely marked, just a thin break between trees. As soon as we started walking, the sounds of the road vanished. No cars, no wind, just our boots and Lily's excited chatter. The deeper we went, the darker it got. The weak lights from the parking lot faded fast, swallowed up by the trees. Our flashlights became the only real source of light, their beams cutting narrow tunnels through the darkness. Snow clung to branches above us, occasionally dropping clumps that hit the ground with a soft, heavy thud. At one point, I asked them to stop. I don't know why. Something about the silence bothered me. It wasn't peaceful. It felt wrong, like the woods were holding their breath. Lily whispered, asking if something lived out there. Claire squeezed her hand and said no, but her voice shook. That's when I started feeling it. That prickly feeling on the back of your neck, like someone's eyes are on you. I kept turning around, shining my flashlight down the trail behind us. Every time, there was nothing. Just snow and trees and darkness. We finally reached a small clearing where the trees looked fuller, healthier. Lily ran ahead, spinning around, pointing at different ones. Claire leaned toward me and whispered that she didn't like this place. She said it felt like we weren't alone. Before I could answer, I heard footsteps, slow, careful, crunching snow. I turned, expecting to see Lily messing around. Instead, there was a man standing on the trail behind us. He was far enough away that I hadn't noticed him at first, but close enough that he shouldn't have appeared out of nowhere. He wasn't dressed for the cold. That was the first thing that stood out. Thin jacket, no gloves. His hands were red and cracked. His face looked stiff, pale, almost waxy. Like he'd been out there a long time. When he realized we were staring, he smiled. It was wide and wrong, like he hadn't practiced using it in a while. He asked if we were looking for a tree. His voice was low and soft, and it didn't match his face. Lily, excited again, nodded and started talking. I felt my stomach drop. Claire cut in fast, saying no, that we were just hiking. The man stepped closer, not fast, not slow, just close enough to make me uncomfortable. He said we didn't need to lie, said he wasn't with the park. The way he said it made it clear he knew exactly why we were lying. Something about him felt empty. His eyes looked tired, but not in a normal way. More like he hadn't slept because he couldn't. I told Claire we should head back. She didn't argue. As we passed him, he stayed still, smiling, nodding like this was all perfectly normal. Lily kept asking if he was coming with us. I told her to keep walking. Every time I looked back, he was closer. We didn't hear him move. When the parking lot came into view, I told them to run. Claire scooped Lily up and took off. I stayed back, gripping the saw, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. The man stopped and told me to go back to my SUV. That's when I knew he'd been watching us long before we ever saw him. When I reached the car, Claire was crying. Both right side tires were shredded. Clean cuts. No accident. She tried calling for help, pacing the lot until she got a signal. Lily sat in the back seat, silent now, eyes wide. When the dispatcher finally understood what was happening, she told us to lock the doors and stay put. That's when Claire pointed at the trees. There were shapes out there, more than one. Standing just beyond the light, two of them started walking toward us. Slow,